In fact, if I drive through, and I'm using Carlisle as an example because Carlisle has a lot of nice little cul-de-sacs where there's, an enclave of luxury homes or, older bungalows or whatever, where you'll find a bunch of bikes, kids' bikes on the front lawn or on the front driveway, like you and I probably saw back in in the early '80s or mid '80s,
Yeah.
When that was the only thing to do, like go and see your friend Jimmy, knock on the door, can Jimmy come out and play?
Yeah.
And the only way you knew where all your friends were where the bikes were in the front lawn, right? Hello, welcome to episode 89 of KT Confidential. We are your hosts. I'm Ariel Cremendi. He's Adrian Trott.
I'm Adrian Trott. Welcome to the show. Hey, first let's start off. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and drop a like. Appreciate you watching the show. And if you're streaming it, wherever you're streaming it, which could be one of many places, let us know. Comment. Tell us what you think and follow us.
It's funny. I was talking to one of our soon-to-be clients. We're working with him on buying an investment property or two. And I was speaking to him and he says, oh yeah, I watched that in one of your recent podcasts. So he's a avid follower. And I said, well, do you have any topics that you want us to discuss in upcoming episodes? And he says, actually, every time I think of something, the next podcast that's what you talk about. So it's we must it's kismet. We must be thinking alike. Anyways,
that's funny. Well, I think this week the topic it flows nicely from last week, and I think it may be, to your point, I think maybe it's a question or something that's come up because of that topic. So last week we talked about. You can't hear me? You can't hear anything?
You cut out. Can't hear you.
I hear you fine. Hang on. Okay, you can keep talking. I'll try to figure out what's going on.
There.
You hear me?
Now.
I didn't change anything. You can hear me now. You can hear me fine.
I can hear you now.
So what I was saying is,
word you say to me.
I'm going to just sit here and let you serenade me. Last week, we talked about the number one things on buyers' lists, what's motivating, encouraging people to move right now, what they're looking for, and that nicely leads into this week's conversation.
No, so last week we talked about open houses. It was 2 weeks ago.
Oh shit! Sorry, 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago we talked about.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh my goodness, isn't it unbelievable? Having so much fun. And so those things, if you didn't listen to it, make sure you do. But the number one things that are driving people to move right now are things related to
space.
I'd say strongly influenced by the situation with COVID too, being confined to your house. People want space. They want to live in rural properties instead of urban, or they want urban properties that have bigger, more private lots, and they want pools and things where they can get out and enjoy the space without feeling confined. And tons of people moving out of the city, especially, like big city, like Toronto, living small, 300, 400, 500 square foot condo. They want a house, something with a backyard. And the people in the urban areas are now like, I want rural. I need something bigger than this. So today we're talking about pros and cons to rural living. So urban versus rural. What are the pros? What are the cons?
Let me just kind of backtrack a little bit on this discussion before we get into it, because I'm going to preface all of this by saying everybody has their own wish list, and everybody that wants to move to rural setting will have their own reasons for doing so.
Yeah.
But the amount of people that we've seen that want to move out of the urban areas into the rural areas have increased dramatically in the last few years. And, our prime trade area is Halton and Peel region, Hamilton region. And from those regions specifically, we are seeing that transition. right? And that transition is twofold, because you see people moving. And again, I had this discussion a couple of days ago with a client that why is Mississauga and Milton, as an example, booming? And it's because people in Toronto, there's a lot of young professionals, as an example, right? In their 30s, they hook
Yeah.
up, they find their forever spouse, hopefully forever. They have kids, and now they say, well, now we're gonna move to the burbs.
It's funny
And
that you have to say forever spouse. It's like people say forever home, and they just
yeah.
know that there's going to be in between ones. Hopefully, that's not the same as your spouse.
Yeah, well, the divorce rates are quite high these days. But
That's true.
anyway, so what I'm talking about is that transitional period from going into being single, or just a couple without kids, or a couple in your younger years, and then you say, well, we can't afford. We might like living on King Street in Toronto, but we can't afford to.
Yeah.
We can't afford to buy something, and certainly you don't want to raise children there. So now let's move to Etobicoke. Let's move to Mississauga. Can't afford those. Let's move to Milton. Can't afford that. Let's move to Guelph.
Yeah.
So you end up in an urban setting, and then what happens is, when you're living in the urban setting, a lot of people are feeling confined. They're feeling like they don't have space in their backyard because the yards are quite small, and for most properties, the home itself is usually not as big, and the roads are busier. So we're getting a lot of calls of people from people that they own a nice home now, and they say, well, our dream has been, or we would hope that our next move would be on something like a 1-acre property with a 3,000 square foot home or whatever, with a double car garage and with a pool, or the ability to put a pool on a nice quiet street. Something like our listing that we listed on Appaloosa Trail there. So we're getting a lot of those calls. So that's what's prompted this discussion today. It's something you and I have talked about, that our future goals are probably to make that transitional move a little bit more difficult when you have kids that are in school already and you don't necessarily want to move them out. But when you do it when they're
I agree, and I disagree.
The younger they are, the better it is to make that move. Are you going to disagree because you think it gives them an opportunity to meet new people, or?
No, not necessarily. Any change is hard, and it's easy to find excuses. But I think, I think there's, you can still keep them in touch with their existing friends, and there's so many things that the kids love about a rural property, being able to run around or get an ATV or whatever. Depends on the type of house. Maybe that pool will be the selling feature for them. But it's interesting because you get a lot of people that move from the city downtown core from Toronto. They move one municipality over, and then maybe they go a little bit further, and then they go a little bit. Eventually they make that transition, and it is a trend progression, because a lot of people that I've worked with that move from Toronto to the Halton region specifically, they're like, it's too quiet here. I can't sleep at night. Because they're so used to having those ambient sounds. They enjoy the hustle and bustle of the city. So it can be a hard move, but there's a lot of benefits that come with it. But anyways, let's get into pros and cons of moving to a rural area. I hate that word too. It's such an awkward word. Rural.
The country. Move to the country.
Move to the country. All right.
So let's just define rural. And kind of geographic location. So in Halton, you really anything in Milton west of Tremaine Road, and people are going to start to become very familiar with Tremaine Road once the interchange on the 401 opens up in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But anything west. Coming. Yeah, anything west of Tremaine Road really is rural until you get
West of
into,
Tremaine, north of Steeles, south of,
well, not really
oh,
south,
south of
very
stuff. The
little.
very small little section, lower baseline area.
Yes, which will, between Britannia and Lower Baseline, is the next phase, the next growth phase after the Boyne survey in Milton with
Yeah.
17,500 homes. Then they are going to transition into that block. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but that's between Britannia and Lower Baseline up to James Snow Parkway down to Tremaine, and probably another 12 or something thousand homes going in there.
Yeah.
But that'll eliminate anything south. So really from the lake, you're driving up to Steeles Avenue, and anything north of Steeles would kind of be your rural.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it then. So
let's just, first of all, one of the big things that's changed that I think a lot of people would say is a negative is your distance to work or your commute. But I think that's changed for a lot of people, especially right now, with flexibility of working environments. People are now often, it may not change. A lot of people are not going back to work. They're not going to the office anymore. Businesses have realized it's not necessary. They've recognized their employees can be productive working from home, and that they've now been given that freedom. And maybe now they're even being more productive. Who knows? So that's a big thing.
And a lot of people have had to retool how they earn an income.
Yeah.
So now you have people that are, well, I'll give you an example. So my spouse was on my payroll as an assistant doing some work for me at home, maybe running around picking up a check or doing some things like that, or dropping off a sold sign and random things like that for me. But once we shut down the office, I cut her off the payroll because we didn't have any income coming in. And she's like, "Well, I need to have my own income too, even though everything is shared." But she likes to have her own money, and rightfully so. So she's now a representative for a company called Zaya, an active sportswear company.
Yeah, I see all her posts.
Yeah, and she's been getting very active on social media, and is actually doing a tremendous job in getting a client base and all this. And so she started this business, in times that she's not taking care of the kids in the house and all that stuff. So kind of like a part-time, not so part-time thing, but social media and the phone has enabled her to be able to do that. And what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of people doing those sort of things. They're making things at home for selling, so handmade, handcrafted items. They are becoming more productive with earning secondary income. So even if they do have their sole employment still running the way it was and getting paid the way they were, now they're thinking, well, it would be nice to have additional income.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many easy ways to do it, from using freelance websites to making a product to flipping stuff to drop shipping. The options are endless.
So, quick side note: the whole drop ship concept has always been something that I wanted to learn about. So back in March, April, I actually took the full Shopify course.
Yeah.
And signed up with Uberlo, which is one of the big suppliers for drop shipping companies. It is amazing how many people are resellers on Amazon that are just drop shipping items that they linked up with a company, or even like Alibaba Express and these companies. And I'll give you an example. We have these silicone muffin cups.
Yep. We've got similar.
Yeah. Well, I think we paid $10 for the lot of them. When you don't think of it, because if you go into the store, that's what you're going to pay, $10. Meanwhile, while I was doing my course and looking into all these items that you can drop ship, And well, these silicone cups come up, and it's like $1.90 for what we paid $10 for.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, there no wonder there are people doing this. There's good profit in it.
Well, I mean, if
And
you think of it, it's no different than having a retail store. I mean, you're just
that's right.
taking products from various manufacturers and distributors.
Well, it is different. It is different because you don't have the overhead.
No, that's for sure. But I mean, the concept of it.
The concept is the same. It's wholesale to consumer.
It's
with a retailer in the middle.
And who can market their store the best and draw more traffic in? You just don't have a physical location.
So while I was going through this, I was interested in getting, I don't know if you've seen these acupuncture mats where you lay down on them, and it's supposed to be doing all kinds of, balancing of your body and your muscles. It's like acupuncture, but
like
it's
there's needles in it.
They're kind of like plastic. You know what they look like? They look like spikes at the bottom of your golf shoes.
Oh, okay. All right.
But they're pointier and there's more of them.
Some more. Okay.
And it's a mat, and you lay down on it, and it's supposed to like do the same thing acupuncture does, or close to it. And I was going through this whole Zen phase, and my meditation that I picked up that I'm doing on a regular basis, and all this. And I have a bad back, and I thought, well, maybe I'll give it a try. And it was like $100, $120, and I'm like, well, that's kind of expensive, but they're selling a shit ton of them. It's like $17 to drop ship it from China. And I'm like, well, oh man, good thing I didn't order it, because I would have felt ripped off looking at that right now.
Yeah.
But anyways, the whole concept, the whole idea is, I think there's more people that are doing these sort of things, more people going on to like Fiverr and freelancer.com and places like that, and becoming selling their expertise to people that need it. And then there's a lot of people that are just working virtually. Even if I look within our own business, our property management company has learned how to do checkups on properties virtually. We've learned how to do on the purchase and selling side of things. We've learned how to perfect a consultation virtually. People enjoy it. They're more comfortable with it. They're doing it in the comfort of their home. So I think it's brought in a new world, but that's the transitional phase. And if I think to our children, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, how they will want to work, do you really think somebody's going to want to pop in a car at that point and drive an hour to work, or hop on a GO train and be in that hustle and bustle to go for an hour and probably make less money than they could by sitting at home working?
Yeah, there's no need to. There's no need to.
And things are changing.
Board meetings, all this stuff, everything's going to go to virtual.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I mean, it's a little bit of a drawn out answer to the first point, but it's very relevant, and I don't think it'll change anytime soon. So yeah, I think that kind of kiboshes that concern for a lot of people, because they no longer necessarily have the same commute. So they have the flexibility of being able to live in more areas without the concern of driving a lot.
Correct. Now, are we going to go down the positives or negatives, pros and cons, or are we going to mix them up?
Throw me a positive. What's a positive?
Well, for me, there's a lot of positives, but one of them is just getting away from the traffic and the congestion and having a little bit more breathing room, right? Potentially without being too far. Because, okay, I'm lucky enough that I have a property up north that certainly if I drive up there, I've got that breathing room. I feel good. I've got all that stuff, but it's a 3-hour drive.
Yeah.
You go out to Carlisle, I don't know, door to door. How long does it take you to get to Appaloosa Trail? 16 minutes?
Yeah, 20 max. But it's an enjoyable drive too.
Right. So you get the country setting without being far. And a lot of people that I talk to, especially ones that work if you work in Milton, Oakville, Mississauga, Burlington, Brampton, you have the ability to, within a 20-25 minute drive, be in that country, that rural setting,
Yeah.
and just have that nice short drive, but very comfortable and peaceful drive to work or back home. And a lot of people say, "Hey, I need that time to unwind before I get home." Like you and I, our offices in Oakville and Milton. If we go to either of our offices, it's not that nice of a drive, and it's not a very peaceful or long enough drive that we kind of are able to decompress, if you will,
Yeah.
on the way home.
But your point was, when you're there, because we're getting back onto the commute thing. When you're there, it's quieter and more peaceful. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
Correct. Like you get the pro is you're getting that peace and quiet. You're getting the mature trees most of the time. You're getting the quiet streets where the kids can go out in the street and play.
There's a huge pro. Like, how many streets are there in urban areas where you feel comfortable letting your kids out on the street? There's not many.
Right. In fact, if I drive through, and I'm using Carlisle as an example because Carlisle has a lot of nice little cul-de-sacs where there's, an enclave of luxury homes or, older bungalows or whatever, where you'll find a bunch of bikes, kids' bikes, on the front lawn or on the front driveway, like you and I probably saw back in, when in the early 80s or mid 80s.
Yeah.
When that was the only thing to do, like go and see, your friend Jimmy, knock on the door, can Jimmy come out and play?
Yeah.
And the only way you knew where all your friends were where the bikes were in the front lawn, right? You still see that in those rural settings.
Yeah.
You don't really see it in higher density urban areas.
No, and I think the peace and quiet, it contributes to, I think I'm a big advocate of just the fact that your home should be a place where when you go in, you should be able to unwind and feel at peace and comfortable and happy and enjoy the space. And for some people, and me personally, the idea of having the rural atmosphere with the bigger property and some more big trees, and I think that really contributes to that. You pull into your driveway that can fit more than half a car, and I think it really contributes to that. So just sitting out back and hearing the birds chirp and hearing the breeze blow through the trees is very nice, to the point though where, with my house in urban Milton, putting those trees up in my backyard, it completely changed the dynamics of it. Yep. So if you can't afford or don't want to move to a rural area, but you do want some of that, I don't know what you'd refer to it as, but by having the trees there, it makes a world of difference.
I agree. Obviously, we've talked about it before. I did the same thing with putting up my cedars and the trees. I've got the 2 maples, all the ornamental pear trees, and then the cedars across the back. Even though it's a small backyard, now that it's filled in over the last 3 to 4 years since we've installed it, and it's really nice. Like, I think it's really nice to sit out back there. It's very peaceful. Certainly makes me less anxious or give me that anxiety that I got when I looked out my window and all I saw was my neighbor directly behind me.
Yeah, for sure.
No offense to you, but you and my neighbor behind me and the one behind you with all of your pergolas and your outhouses.
You don't like me?
And all
you
that
don't like
stuff.
me skinny dipping in the hot tub?
Well, it's not even so much the skinny dipping part. Do you go into your hot tub naked?
I don't usually go into it naked, but I am in it naked sometimes.
Yeah,
that makes sense. You can't see anything with the jets going.
Well, I really don't care. To me, it doesn't matter. Does your wife go in naked?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer that.
It's not. I think a lot of people do.
Do your kids go in the hot tub?
Yeah, we turn the temperature down for them. So like if we know they want to go in one night, it's going to be cooler, we'll turn the heater off during the day and open the lid. It gets down to like bathtub temperature and they can go and play in the evening.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Now you give a pro.
All right. So we've got, what have we got? We've got the commute is not so bad anymore for many people. So that helps with some. We've got, it's more peaceful and quiet. Now let's talk about a con, and that would be it's more work. You've got a bigger lawn. You've got a bigger driveway. You've got trees. You've got certain elements that do not exist in many urban areas. So it requires a bit of work. Like people complain about cottages.
No. It's not a bit of work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yes.
And you have to understand it's a lot of money.
Yes.
Okay. Because oftentimes more land, unless you're going to like Fergus, and who really wants to go out that far? Although it's actually becoming more desirable now.
We have clients. I was hanging out with
clients out in Fergus, but it's a small percent. It's a small percentage, right?
Yeah.
But your property taxes go up.
Yes.
Your cost of home ownership is going to go up because the purchase price is inevitably going to be higher in most cases, depending on what you're selling in the urban setting. But more land, more home, more features, you're probably going up in price. So now you got to think, can I mow all this lawn and trim it and do all of the manicuring and maintenance of the property itself?
I can tell you, based on all the houses we see and the people live in our neighborhood, I can say the vast majority of people, even if you think you can, the answer is no. So you should hire somebody.
Yes, if you're moving to a rural area with that sort of property, even if you have a riding lawnmower and things like that, you're going to end up hiring things like arborists to fix up some of your trees and, whatever. Now the home is bigger, so your roof is bigger. You've got septic systems.
That's right.
You've got well water. Some of them have propane or oil tanks. Those all require maintenance. Eventually, they require replacing, and it's more money. It's more upkeep. Your internet service is more expensive in many cases,
and not as fast. In many cases.
Yeah, that's changing. But
it'll inevitably improve, but it'll never be at the same level as in an urban area.
Correct. And so those are some of the things to consider, because a lot of people don't know exactly the undertaking. And what I find is a lot of the homes now, we've sold some in the past where the home is absolutely move-in ready, but because of the amount of undertaking on the property and the home and all of this, a lot of times you're buying a home that will require a cash injection of some kind right off the onset, whether it's updates of some kind, like a renovation. We had a client that they found out a year later that there was a foundation issue, and nothing that would have been visible until they started a renovation and started taking out windows and doors. And then they recognized, there might be a little bit of a problem here. If we're gutting this area of the home, we can't just leave the foundation as it is. We gotta repair the foundation. So you find out those kind of unexpected expenses a lot more in a rural property than you would in an urban.
What about schools? That's something to think about. A lot of conveniences with kids and parents with schools in urban areas is you can walk your kids to school in 10, 15 minutes, sometimes less. So that's a bit different. So that's something to consider, is getting to school, whether it be by bus or driving. Usually one of the two is required. There are exceptions, though. There are some small rural towns where you can live within walking distance of the school. And there's some rural schools that are extremely highly ranked and desirable.
Yeah, very good schools in some cases, like Brookville.
Yeah.
Very, very highly rated school. That's one of the schools I've had on my radar for my kids. But you're right. I mean, and then there's that gap in transitional periods because elementary schools are probably a little bit easier to have access to in the rural setting. But then once they transition to high school, oftentimes you're going to a more urban location to get to the high school. So all of a sudden you might have a 10-minute drive to the elementary school, but now you've got a half an hour drive to the high school. And sometimes you don't have busing to those areas. So it's up to parents driving them to and from school.
Yes. Yes. That's a big factor for people. And that's, I would say,
But the schools are quite good in a lot of the rural settings that we do our transactions in anyway.
yeah.
I do get very good feedback, like Kilbride and some of those schools are just great.
Yeah.
And the population of those schools are much smaller, so you have less kids per class.
Yeah.
Most people will say it's more like a family environment, more like a neighborhood environment within the school, and everybody kind of knows each other. So pros and cons to that for sure.
Well, and it kind of coincides with the other aspect of just the general conveniences or lack of conveniences of local amenities. Like, right now we can walk down the street, go to the LCBO, the beer store, the grocery store, the pizza shop, the sub shop, the ice cream shop. It's very, very convenient. And delivery as well. You can virtually have anything delivered. Depending on your location in a rural area, it's likely you don't have that same degree of convenience, and some people may not deliver there, depending on where you're at. So those are things to consider. Now, while I say it's an inconvenience, it's not as convenient, obviously, but I think when you live in that sort of when you have a rural property, you plan accordingly. You're maybe meal planning a little bit better, so that on Thursday night you want to cook hamburgers. So, when you do your shopping on Sunday, you've got everything prepped and ready to go, and you're more organized that way. And it reduces a lot of that inconvenience.
I agree. Well, just like I see behind you there, you've got stacks of crap that I'm sure that's all of the stuff you're taking to the cottage.
Yeah.
And you're going up to the cottage for a week or so. That is exactly what you do when you own a rural property, right? Like you do that advanced planning. You stock your groceries and stock your cupboards, so you don't have to make random trips like to pick up an onion or whatever.
Right.
And that's what you do.
And you might be more inclined to have a nice big garden out back.
Yes. Or have some chickens. Have a chicken coop.
Yes, there you go. I have we have a beautiful rural property coming up. In fact, when this airs, I don't know, it may be on the market, maybe not, but soon, anyways. And that's on Phipps Line, and that's like for me, that's like the ideal location, close to town.
It's like less than 5 minutes to Walmart.
I timed it 3 minutes with one red light, and there's only
3 minutes to Walmart in Milton.
Yeah, and
that's tough to find.
5 acres. The driveway is 500 feet, so there's something. You got a big driveway to manage, but it's the moment you turn onto the lot, it's like you feel good. You feel relaxed.
The driveway doesn't bug me, but if a tractor isn't included with the purchase, then I would highly recommend you visit a local John Deere location with the purchase of a property like that.
For sure.
And you get all of the accessories you need to plow your snow and mow your lawn and, do that kind of maintenance.
Yeah. And there's another thing with rural. I mean, rural is just, there's many types of lots. There's some that are more flat and open. And then there's some that are densely treed. So it depends on what you want, and each one offers its pros and cons too.
And this is a topic that we could kind of debate and go back and forth on for quite some time. By the way, if you are listening to this podcast and you like what we're talking about right now, or you've got some feedback, or you've got your own opinion on rural properties or rural versus urban, drop us a comment, send us a DM, and please give us the thumbs up. Give us the like on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, Adrian, as we kind of wind this episode down. As I mentioned, you and I have talked about this in the past, that probably for both of us, it's quite likely that our next moves, and we've been neighbors now for 10 years almost.
Will we still be neighbors? Will we still be neighbors? Let's find a lot that's big enough to.
Hey, I would consider that if we found a big enough lot and could build 2 custom homes on them and subdivide, I'd be open to that. But anyways, assuming that is not happening, and let's say you and your wife decide, okay, we're going to sell our house now and we're going to move. What does that home look like? Where is it? And what features does it have?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? It would be a tough decision just with, there's so many styles of homes that I love. So I really couldn't say the style of home necessarily. I would say a good size. I don't know. I like densely treed. I like privacy. For me, if I'm in a rural area, having a house that's visible from the road defeats the purpose. So I want something with privacy. But it's tough because at the same time, it's nice to have neighbors. If assuming you get along, it's nice to have neighbors. Go over there, have a drink, have a barbecue. Your kids running back and forth. So I'd really have to think about it. But at the end of the day, and both of my brothers live in Huntsville. They both have properties, I think, between 3 and 5 acres or so, and they're very private. And I like that a lot. Being able to go out and make noise, have a party, have music, and not really interfere with anybody else. I enjoy that. I think the peacefulness of the forest and the birds chirping and the bugs biting, which is another thing, which I'd be willing to get over. But that would be my ideal. Very much like Fifth Line, to be honest. And the house, I don't know. It's hard to say. I love houses I'd want a big, more like a typical country estate with a big front porch and a swinging chair and I don't know.
Well, maybe you should buy that property on Fifth Line then. Sounds like it might be the ideal home for you.
Yeah, that could very well be.
So, mine, I've always loved the Kilbride, Carlisle, and Brookville areas. Yeah. So that is exactly where I would have my eyes. I wouldn't want anything more than an acre because I wouldn't want to upkeep that, and certainly wouldn't want to pay. I would be the type of person that would pay somebody to upkeep it, much like I do with my cottage, because I wouldn't have the time, I wouldn't have the patience, and I probably wouldn't do it as well. And I do not want a home that is hidden, tucked away somewhere. And Natalie would agree with me on that. We've talked about it, that we want privacy, but still able to see the homes around you. So if an emergency happens, as an example, you're not tucked away, so the kids can, see other people, so you're not totally isolated. I think for me, a 3-car garage would be a dream because I like keeping our vehicles in the garage. But once they're in the garage, there isn't room for stuff. And we have a lot of stuff and it accumulates real quick. So I would give up almost interior size of the home to have extra garage space, or a 2-car garage with a big separate shed or outhouse kind of, not outhouse, out storage kind of area. Yeah. Outhouse might be good for me. I don't know. And then, I really love the idea of a 1-story, like a bungalow style, maybe even having sort of a back split. That's hard to find in rural, but bungalow ranch style with a walkout basement would be my ideal. And I don't care what it would look like because I would probably want to make it my own anyways.
My biggest thing would be, and I think you would agree, is I would want a big in-ground pool, beautiful
Yes.
landscaping, a cabana with a TV and a fireplace. That's my thing. I get excited about.
Yes, and that's what I was just going to say. To me, the more important concept of moving into that setting would be to have the cottage at home.
Right? I can see you having a really nice outdoor kitchen.
I would probably sell the cottage. I would probably sell the cottage if that was the case, and
right.
and at least for a number of years. But I mean, of course, you try and have both in an ideal world. You have the lake and boating and fishing and all that stuff is great. But to be able to come home or unwind on a nice, covered patio or a beautiful deck that overlooks a nice pool with a waterfall and maybe your hot tub and some nice hardscape and landscape around it. Yes, an outdoor kitchen with your smoker and your grill or griddle. All of that stuff is beautiful. The challenge is it's very pricey. If you can't afford it, do you want to afford it? And that's what it always comes down to. Now, what I see, and we have clients that have done that, you just get into that market and you develop that over time, right? So as you appreciate the equity in the home, as you make more money, as you save more money, maybe you don't need that pool right away, or you don't need the outdoor kitchen right away. And you time things out. Okay, we'll do this in 5 years. We'll do that in 10 years. And then, for retirement, here's our goal. Or if we want to sell it in 15 years, here's what we need to do to get to that stage in the home. So you kind of plan that.
Well,
too.
And it's not that expensive. I mean, there's a lot of people in urban areas, Halton and Peel, where they own a $1 to $1.5 million house. They could sell that and buy a very nice rural property, maybe slightly smaller and older.
But in Oakville, $1 million gets you a single car garage, maybe a 2,000 square foot home, maybe a 2,000 square foot home with a single car garage in some of the newer areas of Oakville.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get it for $1 million, more like 1.1.
Yeah.
So, for $1.1 million, I can find you a pretty decent home in a rural setting.
100%.
For 1.3, 1.4, you're getting something really nice. And of course, as your budget goes a bit higher, you get bigger land and, more move-in ready stuff too. But anyway, lots of pros and cons to making that move. We're seeing more people do it. If you are listening and you are thinking that this is something I would like to do and you want to chat about it, most of our transactions that go from urban to rural start the process about a year or two out. So if
it takes time. You got to work yourself up to it and answer all those questions and see if it's the right decision for you.
A lot of properties. It's not as easy as buying a home in an urban setting because many homes are cookie cutters, very similar. The areas, whatever. You actually got to get out and see a lot of properties, whether it's virtually or in person. And I would say more so in person for those type of homes.
100%, yeah.
But
you got to walk the lot.
You got to walk the lot. You got to, walk the street. You got to walk the property, the home. You got to smell it, feel it, touch it. And I can guarantee you it's going to take several showings before you find homes that start to check off your boxes, or more importantly, it takes a while before you start recognizing what really is important and what you're willing to overlook. So
yes, well, I think that goes for all real estate, and more so, definitely for rural, but if you're considering any type, I think it's good to get out and see things because it helps open your eyes to what you do or don't want.
Anywho, that's episode 89 of KT Confidential. If you liked what we were talking about today, or if you like the podcast, give us those thumbs up, leave us the comments, leave us the reviews. We really, really appreciate it. And hey, that's a wrap. We'll see you next week.
That's it for 89. Ciao.
Bye bye.